Rich, wild, and black, old school. Follow me back, rack the slide, dump the mic, and pack the Mac, and in my smile, right? Give me a pin, never the gin, never the hand.
What provisions have you set up for your child? I think the biggest question that you need to ask yourself is where you want your kid to end up, right? And so once you have decided that you're going to have children, or you find out that you're pregnant, or whatever the situation is, as a father, where do you want your child to end up, right? We're going from 0 years old to, let's say, 25, right? Now, obviously, the investment that we put into each of our kids is going to vary, and it's going to be much less at 25 than it is at 3. But by the time they're 25, as a range, by the time they're in their 20s, they should have the bulk of the big adult lessons already taught. And so what I do is I think, okay, when my kid comes home from wherever, from their life, what are things that they should know? At 25, they should know some basic tax strategies. They should know some financial literacy. They should know how to invest, where to invest, when to invest, and what to invest. And those are things that I should have taught. Now, throughout the course of them growing up, small lessons become bigger lessons, right? At 12, it's chores for money, right? At 14, it's, hey, let's go to the bank, get yourself a bank account. Let's understand money out, money in, being responsible for that money. At 16, when they start to work, it's, well, what are some high yield savings accounts? Not just a regular savings account at your local bank, but what are some things that are going to set you up for the rest of your life? Savings accounts that will give you some money. And at 18, 19, 20, as we go forward, what are some financial planning strategies? Life insurance, IULs, IRAs, Roth IRAs, whatever financial mechanism that you find viable for your situation, they should know those things. Do you have residence for them? Do you have a house for them? Clearly, at 13, they're living with you, right? Unless they're in boarding school or some kind of prodigy where they're at a college campus. But for the most part, they're living in your house. Have you thought as a father, where is this child going to live past living here? Especially in this financial climate where it's not looking too good for Gen Z, right? It's not looking too good for them to get out, get a job, go to college, save some money and buy the big house. I'm a Gen X guy. It was difficult for us, but not nearly as difficult for them, given the wage gap, given the idea that what they make is a small percentage of what they'll need to purchase the house. So now you run into the idea that they are forced into relationships in order to have the things that they'd like in their life. The mainstream, we'll call it the mainstream American dream. It's going to be difficult for them. So have I, as a father, thought, how am I going to assist in having, homes for them? What are the strategies for that? I know for me, what I had always thought is when you go away to college, given that happens, and given you go to a college that's in a market that's affordable, is it possible that I purchase a home in that area, put my kid in the house, 18, 19, 20, that's roommate time. So now that kid is able to get roommates that pay that kid rent, which then will allow that child to understand business, understand management, understand managing people, all of that, right? And so you have the roommates in there. They're essentially paying the mortgage. And then once college is over, the roommates move out. Does the child sell the house? Do they keep it for equity? Do they rent it out as a rental? Do they stay there and pay the mortgage themselves? Do they keep one or two roommates? Those are all options. Obviously, as life goes on, those are options. Are you in a financial situation to buy a rental house that is a decent rental house that you would put your child in? Buy it early. Let's say you buy it before they're born or when they're young. Rent the house out to good tenants. And by the time it's time for that child to move on, we either sell the house for the equity, keep the house and put the child in it, put the kid in it with some roommates or siblings, whatever it is that you want to do. But have we thought these are the things that are long-term planning for our kids, right? Everything isn't, well, I got to have it now. And I think the difficulty, especially with real estate, is that we tend to want to buy the things that are at the top of our price range, right? I want a gorgeous home right now. I want it in the suburbs. I want it to be, 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 square feet, where it's unnecessary. And then by the time the child grows up and now is in that situation, there's no money left to afford that kid the way into the real estate market, right? I don't have the liquid equity unless I sell my house and move, which, maybe I do or maybe I don't, but there hasn't been a plan for the kid. There's been a plan for me, and I think, look at me, I'm such a provider, but I haven't provided things for the future, versus I buy a 2,500 square foot house in a good school district, in a good neighborhood that's less expensive, maybe at the middle or the bottom of my range, but now I have money left over. That's what you use to buy the rental house and thus and so. And so these are thoughts that have to be thought out early, right? You're going to be in a scramble running around looking for a place for this kid to live at 20. That's not a good look, right? Back up, right? So now we're into cars. Have we figured out a plan for my child to have a vehicle when they're 16? Not something brand new Mustang, brand new Ford Raptor. That's unnecessary, but some sort of vehicle for this child to gain autonomy and a way to get to and from work, to and from school, to and from activities, which will free up me and my partner to do other things, right? It's not just this child is spoiled. I look at it as, is my kid 16, able to drive? Well, now I have another partner. I have somebody else that's in the house that can aid and run into the store, picking up younger siblings, any sort of vehicular chores that we have in the house. And so it's imperative that I find a way to put that kid in a car. Now, I have to think about that years before they turn 16. And the good thing is time is an independent variable, right? And so it's not like it's a shock, right? I know when you're going to be 16. It takes 16 years. I'm not thrown for a loss. Oh my God, how did we get here? And so when you don't have that setup, you start to look at, well, what was the planning mechanism that you used to get to this point, and you're unprepared? What things did I purchase in my life for me or for the kid or whatever it is that would disallow me from being in this position at 16? And I think these are things that are sacrificial when we look at our own lives. Did I buy a brand new pair of Jordans? Did I buy a brand new car? Did I buy, a house at the top of the market? Did I buy a bunch of new clothing? Did I do all these things and now there's no funds left for what the kid needs to grow? And that is definitely my responsibility as a father. I take that to heart. And so what I did with my plan was I had a car ready when my kid was 12. She looked out and said, "Ooh, I want that car." So now in my head, I know that's fine. This is an appropriate car for you to have at 16. I need to get another one. So that plan is in place, right? And so I have another car. So when she turns 16, I can pass that car down, and then I can either replace it or I can drive my other car or whatever. I'm in that place. Well, what I didn't do is buy $100,000 car, and then it's either too nice for her to drive, or I can't afford to buy her anything else. What I didn't do is buy, extra clothes and the brand new jewelry and all those things. That's what I didn't do until I figured out what is it, that I'm responsible for that I can provide. What I did was buy a house. I bought a house in a really nice neighborhood, smaller home, duplex. I have tenants in that house. And so when my kids are of age, when they're old enough to be out on their own, they have that option. They may not want to live in that neighborhood. They may want to go to a different state. They may want to live with friends somewhere else, but there is a provision for them. And that came from me buying my primary house is not so expensive It's not in such a wonderful, you know, neighborhood above my means that I couldn't afford to do something different. And so now I have that investment, right? I have a car for her. I have an educational plan for her. I have a house that will suit both kids, you know, duplex up and down. So son lives upstairs or downstairs, daughter lives in the other one. It's entirely possible. And so these are things that we have to think about as a father. What are my provisions? When I was a young man, I would look at some older guys and think, man, buy new shoes, dude. You got holes in your shoes. Buy a nicer car. And now I start to realize that those were the sacrifices that those fathers were making. I'm not interested in looking shiny. I'm not interested in what people think about what I'm driving or what I'm wearing. I'm interested in making sure that my kid has everything that they're supposed to have in order to thrive and flourish in their life. And that's a very important thing, because the result of which, when we don't have these things in place, which a lot of us don't, right? We buy the house, we have a nice car that we can take the kids back and forth in, and we believe that that's all that we can afford. And that's okay. I can't judge your financial situation. I wouldn't start to do that. But what what happens when we're unable to think that far ahead, 20 years ahead, 25 years ahead, is we cause the next generation to start from scratch. And our generations have done that for so long that we think that it's normal. We think that, okay, my child's 18, get out, figure out your life, start your world, right? That's what we believe. And it has been normalized, versus in different cultures or even here, the most successful people, as long as the child is productive, school, work, you know, making some moves in life, they're welcome to stay in the home until they're able to move out and move on in a great in a productive fashion. So starting from scratch is the worst situation you can be in, because you're not just starting at zero and building, you're starting from negative and trying to build just to a plane of equilibrium so that you can move forward. So typically what most kids will do is grow up, and when they do move out, they get an apartment. They get an apartment with their friends, and then they get a car payment. And so you have all money out, no money in, right? Every time you pay rent, that's just a loss of money for that month, versus being able to put that child in a house and they either save the money for their own mortgage or their own home later on in cash, or to invest in their own further education or invest in a business or whatever, what have you. But generations starting from scratch is the worst thing. It's the worst thing you can get, because it keeps all of us in this worker status. It keeps all of us grinding and being proud. Oh, I get up at 5 and I grind till midnight, and then I never sleep. And at what point are you living your life? You know, and so what we're trying to do at this point is to prevent each child starting from scratch. What we want is for each child to start from where I left off and then build upon that. And that is how you create generational wealth. And beyond generational wealth, which is a great catchphrase, is generational wisdom. Do these kids learn the lessons that I have already learned and then add to those, instead of continuing to relearn the things that we already have information on? It doesn't make sense for them to lack generational wisdom, and we are so focused on building generational wealth without it. And so that's the goal, is for them to be able to stand on the end point that I left off at and then grow from there. And that way, what you have is a familial system that continues to build and is self-sufficient and is, you know, wondrous. And you look at these strong families, these famous American families, Kennedys and the Bushes and whomever else, and that's where it's at. They have a basic centralized homestead. Like we've all heard of Cape Cod and Kennebunkport. That's where they go. They go there to after a divorce. They go there, you know, after graduation. They go there to reset. They go there to build things, and then they venture out into the world and conquer the world, rather than venturing out to the world unprepared and not ready to actually compete in that world. They spend 10 years paying rent and learning on the job training and have never built anything. You know, if you get fired at that point, you're completely screwed because there's no place to go, you know? And typically what happens with a lot of parents is they buy these houses. The houses are great. And then the house is too big. So they want to sell the house and move to Arizona and get themselves a 2-bedroom condo with 2 bathrooms, maybe if the kids come and visit, but the kid can't live there. And so now you don't have a place where the child can come back to reset because they're going to make mistakes. That's how it works, right? That's how it works. And so the most important thing that you can get in the American landscape is real estate. Some piece of generationally owned real estate, 1 acre, 300 acres, half acre, a condo, something that is owned. That way, as your generations build, they're building off of that, you know? And so we need to look into the future as the father in order to provide the children a jump off point in order to grow, flourish, and become wondrous people, better people than we are, rather than relegating them to being stagnant and starting from scratch every single generation. Thanks a lot. Tune in next time.
Give me a pin, never the gin, never the hand of it, significant, never the grin without the finish, maybe diminish, make it smaller, I'm a baller from the start, chart my rise, open your eyes.